All right, welcome to the Erie Music History Podcast. I'm Chip Shell, your host, and today's guest goes by many names. You may know him as Vic Vinyl, Big Vic, Jack Dog, Vic Falcone, or Dean Gleason. He's also the first guest who has ever provided me with a very extensive and organized file that included his music and band resume, as well as photos and videos to go along with it. And I'll post a lot of that on the episode. So with that, John Jack Bernard, welcome to the podcast.
Well, yeah, we'll go by Jack.
I know.
It's just going to keep it simpler. Answer to that.
Has anyone ever called you John? Like maybe when you were younger?
Only at the bank or the police department. You know?
Okay, sure. Yeah, those are the important places. All right.
That was only in Edinburgh one time. So.
All right, we won't cover that today, I promise. So you've played in a lot of well-known, long-lasting Erie bands like, I'm just going to mention a few here because we'll get into it, but the original Pistol Whip, the Motown version, you played in that band.
Nobody remembers that.
Oh, come on. The Frenchmen, of course, the Dogs. You've got your old classic Dogs t-shirt on. And for 32 years, you've played in the Bluesbeaters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a long one.
Now, when you and I first met at the Rathskeller, you really got my attention when you said, hey, I was in the Living Dead band, and I didn't realize that. And I mean, the Living Dead band, for folks who don't know, they preceded the Snowmen with all the makeup and everything. They were a real Kiss type of thing.
Absolutely, and, yeah, 78, 79.
Yeah, so I'm anxious to get to that part. But as you know from listening, I'm going to walk us through the beginning. So
let's go back.
I only know you as a drummer, so I was super psyched to find out you started out as a bass player. And really young, when you were 11 in like 1965 or so at Jefferson Elementary.
Lived half a block away.
Did you really? Okay. Yeah. So tell me the origin story of Jack the bassist.
Well, I guess we have to go a little back a little farther. Piano lessons when I was in probably third or fourth grade from Mrs. Sellers, my piano teacher. And, you know, when you're whatever age you are at third or fourth grade, you don't want to be taking piano lessons. Right. But I did it, and we got through that. And then Jefferson, fifth grade, I was somehow assigned or volunteered perhaps for what they called orchestra, and I'm making the air quotes here. Orchestra, they called it, because of course nobody knew how to play anything. But I had the biggest hands of anyone in the class, so I was given a 3/4 size bass violin.
How was that when you came home that day?
Well, I don't know if I had to carry it that day. I don't remember. I think what happened is we wound up renting one from Ozeki's, and actually my first private music teacher, other than Mrs. Sellers, of course, was Joe Solkowski, who was clarinetist, polka. He had his own polka band. He was with the Erie Philharmonic.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why I was getting bass lessons, but he was good and knew what he was doing. But I took bass lessons from him for at least a summer or so.
At which Ozeki's?
Oh, this was at his residence. This was at his residence.
Gotcha.
And then I remained in classical music pretty much throughout until the beginning of college.
Oh, okay.
That's a whole other story.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised when you said, Erie Philharmonic first chair, 71, 72.
Well, junior. I was the first chair in junior.
Yeah. Still.
Now, I did get to play with the senior Philharmonic.
Okay.
But of course, I was number 7, 8, not wherever. I was way at the back of the line.
Right,
I think it was once a year they let the first chairs from the junior Phil sit in with the big guys.
Was music a thing in your house? Did you have siblings that played?
Yeah.
Parents?
My dad enjoyed. He had a big hi-fi stereo. He liked everything from opera to jazz to. So I got exposed. To it, certainly.
And so you get your first electric bass. You have that on your list here in '66. You jam with your neighborhood buddies. Was it that Vox that I've seen the pictures of? The electric bass?
No, actually, the first one was the one I'm in pajamas. And I think that was a rental. I don't think they wanted to go and purchase anything until they were sure that I was going to like it and it was going to stick and not be something that would wind up sitting in a closet.
Yeah, right. I didn't know you could rent them back then.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was probably cheap. So anyways, the Vox came, I think, when we finally decided that, I was going to keep doing this, then I got the Vox.
Cool.
And it was awesome.
And how long did you have that? I'm just curious as a bass player.
You probably don't want to hear the story of what happened to it in the end. It's associated with the Living Dead band. I'll just leave it at that.
All right, we'll get to that then. All right. Yeah, I'll be sad, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was not pretty.
So the first band, age 13, Purple Haze, you shorten it to Haze. You have to tell the story of how this band came to be.
Right. Well, my buddy Rick Lamberton, who lived a block down from me, he was the drummer.
Okay.
I was a bass player. We knew each other from the neighborhood. Our parents knew each other. If the name Lamberton sounds familiar, former county commissioner Fred Lamberton was Rick's grandfather. And his dad was a doctor. His brother was a doctor. But he was my drumming buddy. And we'd get together, and I'd play bass, and he'd play drums, and we'd play along to records, and did a lot. Paul Revere and the Raiders. We loved them. So, but it was just a bass player and a drummer.
Yeah.
We needed that other person. So my dad was an attorney. Of course, Rick's dad was a doctor. So we had the doctor and a lawyer. All we needed was the Indian chief. That's for you, Antoine. Anyways, we got better than an Indian chief because it just so happened that my dad was first cousins with Norb Krasinski. Yes, folks, that Norb Krasinski.
That's right. Yeah, we've had Tony on the
absolutely. A great podcast. I listened to that one. And he told a little bit about us. Rehearse back in, those guys would come and sit on the steps because we'd rehearse in their basement, and they would come sit on the steps, and Bill Krasinski, of course, would say, "Scram, get out of here." But back to Bill. My dad and Norb arranged for Bill to come meet Rick and I and jam. And Rick was a year older than me. Bill was 2 years older than me. So he came in, and we were just... Rick and I were just, this guy, he was playing, Blue Cheer and Jimi Hendrix and just wailing on it. And we were like, holy cow, this guy's great. Wow. And immediately we all bonded. He became more or less a big brother to I have a big brother, but his tastes in music and everything kind of ran different. So this was a guy I could relate to. So
it clicked.
It clicked. And like I said, we started rehearsing at the Krasinskis on Wayne Street, and got a taste of that good Polish-Italian cooking from Virginia. And they would put up with, Blue Cheer and Hendrix and all the other stuff that we were doing in the basement.
But Virginia wanted you to play something else.
Absolutely. There was a price to pay, and we had to learn by Buck Owens, "I Got a Tiger by the Tail."
Wow.
And we killed it. We slayed it. We did it for a bunch of 13-year-olds.
13-year-old kids.
At least at the time, we thought we were.
That kept you practicing there, I'm sure.
So, progressing along, we got a gig. We knew enough to play a gig, an hour's worth at least, because we were all kids. We needed rides. We needed our equipment hauled there.
Sure.
And I'm pretty sure that we probably didn't own a PA. We probably were just plugging our mics into our amplifier.
Right,
so it must have sounded god-awful, is all I can think of now.
And that gig was at the Hussar Club?
That was at the Hussar Club on a Saturday afternoon. So imagine this, if you will, Chip.
Yeah.
Into the Hussar Club we go, set up, we get ready to play. There's all our patrons out there sipping their Saturday afternoon Kohler beers.
Yeah.
And here we go launching into what we did. Blue Cheer, Jimi Hendrix, Paul Revere and the Raiders. We've been doing some Beatles at that point too.
Were you singing too?
Yes, I have always sung and played bass or drums.
Got it.
But you might imagine that at the end of each song, we probably got maybe some polite applause.
Right.
And saw people going like this.
Holding their hands over their ears, yeah.
So it was at that time, must have been Bill, remembered Buck Owens. So we pulled out Buck Owens, and all was perfect from there.
Oh, really?
It made the day. So first gig, probably 55 years ago or
That's awesome. And so you got to play back there recently, right? Or with Step and Pappy, right?
Of course, that's coming back. It'd been 40 years since I played bass. Right. So, but that probably, I may have been in there for a wedding reception or a party, but I can't really remember. But it hadn't changed. It hadn't changed in 55 years. It was exactly the the same.
Shout out to the Who's Our Club.
Yeah, we love
there.
the Who's Our
Yeah.
Club.
So,
Anyways.
so Hayes,
Yeah,
lasts for
well, because
few years
again, Bill
or-
was a couple years older,
Yeah.
so he graduated in 1970.
Yeah,
So he
yeah.
was about ready to go to business school and wound up working at the bank. So somewhere 69 thereabouts. We were still hanging out and we were still friends and all that. But I met some other guys. Guitar player by the name of Ed Jepson, who I think we went to junior high at Tech Memorial together.
Okay.
Who knew some other players from Little Italy, and introduced me to John Giordano, who was drummer.
Yep.
John also played later on in a band called I've heard somebody on one of your podcasts mention Cell Tab.
Yeah,
The
oh, yeah.
Beatles.
Yeah, it was,
John was
Mike Miller.
John
Yeah.
was a drummer at some point in that band.
okay.
So John Giordano played drums. Louis Canarozzi, organist.
definitely from Little Italy.
Yeah, and you've heard of the B3.
Yeah.
Well, he had a C3, for God's sakes, the one with the speakers in the bottom. So however heavy a B3 is, a C3 is about another 100 pounds of speakers on the
man.
bottom. And we had to carry that thing.
And did he have a Leslie to go with it?
Had a Leslie to go with
Sure.
it. He did have the dolly. He
Okay.
did have the dolly.
All right.
So we started a band originally called Inside World with Ed Jepson. And we probably played high school dances, the Wycos and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It didn't last a long time, probably a few gigs. And then some of us peeled off. We were in another band called The Republic, which Don was singing, my buddy Rick Lamberton, because somewhere between as in 69 when we put the Inside World together, in somewhere 69, 70, my parents moved to Mill Creek.
Okay, I was going to say.
So I went from city school to McDowell, not knowing anybody.
Right,
So I was the odd man out as far as that goes. But I met guys and was playing with these other guys. From Little Italy. So everybody kind of was just hanging out, and a couple different bands. Fairchild was one of the bands that came. Republic. All of this was during high school, and as I look at the timeline, it was happening so fast.
Yeah.
Don Seelinger, a good friend, and he's one of the guys I recently got back in touch with again because of trying to remember half of this stuff.
And through Facebook.
And through
probably.
Facebook,
Yep.
absolutely, which has been big helping me get remember some of this stuff because I'm old Chip, I can't remember. But so we were changing bands as often as people change underwear sometimes. So it seems as I'm looking at this going. So
Well, I looked at it, in 12 years, you played in 8 bands from 67 to 79.
Well, there you go. You did the math.
And, let's stop at McDowell for a second because I wanted to pull this out. So this is your high school yearbook. All right. And so as I was looking through it, I was like, well, first of all, who is this dude right here? I mean, look at that good looking dude. All right. Jack Bernard, John Bernard.
Hey, hair. Look at that. There's hair.
That's a lot of hair.
There's a hair on that.
But as I started looking through this class, I'm like, oh, okay. So here's Bill Cotter.
Yep.
Here's David Greenberger.
Yep.
Here is Ed Pouton.
Ed Russell.
Ed Russell, right, yeah.
But it was Ed Pouton then. So.
Yeah. Who am I missing that you also graduate with? Because those are all guys that played a lot during that period.
Chuck Leone.
Is Chuck in here too?
Chuck's
I missed
in there.
Chuck. All
John
right.
Drum.
John Drum's in there?
Right there. Wow. It's all 72.
Yeah.
And 71 was Paul Gall.
Right, I was
my
gonna
buddy
say.
Rick Lamberton, my drummer friend, Keith Fischecko.
Oh,
so they
right.
were all a year ahead of us. And then a year behind us was DeBello, DeMonte, and Steve McConnell. So,
Yep.
that little, 70, 71, 72 was... a
lot of folks.
And 73, a lot of musicians.
Yeah, that's very cool. So at McDowell, you are in the orchestra, so you continue with all that stuff, right? But you're also playing in the band. You're playing in bands.
Right. And the one mistake I made was not taking music theory in high school.
Oh, really?
Because when I got to college, that became a problem. So if you're out there and you're thinking of music as your career, don't skip the music theory if they even teach it in high school anymore.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. But
Yeah, that's interesting.
if I could go back, I would change that.
And not a lot of folks probably even realize that. They just want to play 3 chords these days and get down to it and start playing.
Exactly.
And you were playing in a lot of stuff. Like you replaced Paul Gall for a few gigs, speaking of bass players, and And for those of you who don't know, Paul is currently the bass player for Donnie Iris. Played in Anacrusis back then with Keith, I think, right? And
yeah, and I think that might have been when Paul left for Boston, possibly.
Okay.
You know, that rings a bell. But yeah, it was short lived. But oh my God, what a great bunch of musicians to have to learn the parts and get thrown in with.
Who else was in there? Keith,
Chuck, Tom Stone was the drummer.
Bob Arlett.
Bob Arlett was still singing, and we had Dave Shantz, who I think if I'm trying to remember the band at McDowell. They were probably the hottest band at McDowell when I was there. Was it The Wall, or there was a couple different bands. I didn't know it was that one, but anyways, Dave Shantz had been a singer for one of those bands, and he also came on board then. So we had two front people.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So how do you get from Anacrusis, which is Genesis, prog rock? Which do you like that type of stuff?
I did at the time.
Yeah.
You know, I guess I still do too. I've been pretty eclectic. There's a good word as far as what I like and what I listen to. But yeah, I was certainly into a lot of that. Steely Dan, probably one of my favorite all time.
Really?
So, yeah,
okay.
So.
I mean, it's complicated stuff, you know. But then you go into a Motown band, Pistol Whip, but they're already formed, right? Or
no, Pistol Whip was from the ground up. That was of course John. It was his brainchild, John Drum.
John Drum, right?
And Eric Johnson, who
you end up playing with for many years.
Many bands and many years and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And who are we missing here?
In Pistol Whip?
Yeah.
So
Paul Tatera. Yeah, Paul Tatera, and then Art Pike who would also eventually be the Living Dead band.
Right.
You know, and that was from scratch. And it was all Motown and funk, and we had backups. We had 3 female backup singers, the Whippettes. And we probably played a handful of gigs.
Oh, really? That's it?
Yeah, not a lot, because at that point, I think 74. Yeah, I can't remember what John, whether he was going off to start Pistol Whip at that, or to The punk rock Pistol Whip was a few years down the road,
right.
I believe, you know, after that.
Yeah.
After that ended. But, you know, for the life of me, I'm not quite sure, you know, why the funk version of Pistol Whip ceased to be.
I didn't realize it was only around that short period. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And there's still one Whippette, you can't remember her name, is that right?
Yeah, because we had Sandy DeFucia, Linda Williams, and another Linda. So anybody out listening to this, if you remember the third Whippette, Linda, and I'm sorry, but
yes, please tell us.
One of those things we'll just may never know. So,
and Paul Tatera, I mean, that's a guy that did he start Endangered Series record label, or was that John?
That was John.
That was John.
Paul was a West County guitar god hero.
Yeah,
you know. So
heard his name a lot.
Yeah, and honest, you know, I can't remember some of the other bands from that area that he was in, but when I had the chance to play with him, I was like, okay, so between him and Eric Johnson, had some good shredders. I mean, once again, had some good shredders, you know, and just I'll work this in now because I wanted to work this in. Having been a bass player and a drummer, I'm a rhythm guy.
Yeah,
you know, I'm a journeyman, you know, a foot soldier.
Gotcha.
You know, not the guy that's out there to, you know, but
sure,
as everyone knows, if you're not solid on the bass, you're not solid on the drums. Doesn't matter what you put on top, right?
That's right.
So
that's right.
I just wanted to fit that in somewhere.
That's perfect.
Like that. But I was so happy to play with those guys, and we had a couple great guitar players.
Yeah.
So,
and then 3 of you then go on to form Armageddon.
Yeah, to play on R, the letter R, a dash, Magadon, a take on Armageddon.
Okay, all right.
Because I think Armageddon was already taken by someone, or because there was a band that came along later, maybe that was Armageddon. I believe I can't remember. You might know that better than I do. So
it's a killer name. I mean, the logo was great. I loved that.
And we did a lot of good stuff. And here's another name that's come up on your podcast before, and that's Dennis Cray.
Yeah,
who worked at Warren Radio, sold most of us our stereos, and they also had a pro audio department, so PA gear, which was just kind of, you know, starting to get rolling a little bit more because there were so many bands and bands needed gear, So Denny not only was a good guy to know for home stereo, but if you needed a PA system.
Right.
And then we found out he was a drummer, So we started jamming with him. John Kuhn was the other guitar player besides Bill Krasinski. And by the way, so I'm back with Bill again. This is when Bill and I get, kind of reunited again, after the Republic band. So
I was going to say, I mistakenly said three of you leave, but I know eventually Art joins the band, right?
Right.
And Eric, and you're playing with Bill again. So it kind of goes through a few evolutions. Maybe about three, you said?
Yeah, well, because John Kuhn, I remember a band called Orange Norbert. It's sticking in my head for some reason that I think he was in. And whether he left us to go with that band or whether he was with them first, I can't remember. But he left for some reason, and then that's when Eric came in. And we gigged quite a bit. But it came to the point where... And I graduated from college in 76, or excuse me,
73.
Where was that? I got to remember this now. You can edit this out, right?
Absolutely. We'll fix all this in post.
We'll fix all this. Fix all this in post, please. But I graduated college in 76.
76,
okay.
Right.
So, and we had been playing with Armageddon, and the three of us, me and Bill and Eric, we wanted to go on the road.
Oh.
We wanted to start playing. And we had played some out-of-town gigs, and we got the bug.
Yeah.
We wanted to, as everybody does, get out of Erie, of course. What do? You grow up and you get out of Erie. So that's...
Where was out of town at this point? Where were you getting gigs?
We were playing central Pennsylvania, up into New York, down St. Mary's, Du Bois. We hadn't yet got down into the mid-Atlantic like we ultimately would with a Living Dead band.
Right.
But getting up in the Buffalo area, and we just wanted to do more of that. We had a couple overnights, which we wanted to do more of that. And Denny, because of his job at Warren Radio, and he was just more tied down than all of us at that point, he couldn't. He didn't want to. So that's when we got Art into Armageddon.
Okay.
And,
all right. And we should say you're playing hard rock stuff. You're playing UFO, Humble Pie, ZZ Top, all covers at this point, right?
All covers at this point,
right.
Yes.
Yeah, because obviously you have a long stint in original bands
later
on. But yeah, so at this point you've only played in cover bands.
Yeah. Right. And that was, I can't think of too many original bands from that era. To be honest with you, at least locally.
Yeah. So eventually you graduate college, you guys hit the road. It's 76. Kiss is at the maybe highlight pinnacle of their career.
And we were playing some of that by then.
Right.
And even with Armageddon at that point, the summer of 76, we played something called the Bicentennial Boogie Bash down in St. Mary's, PA.
Okay.
I don't think we were the headliner, but we were, we were high on the bill. And, we were starting to experiment with flash powder because all the once again, one band does it, everybody has to do it. So we were starting to experiment with flash powder.
So experiment, that means you have a stage crew. You have a road crew.
Yeah, by the time we're in Armageddon, we got guys who are running sound and humping stuff for us.
All right.
Boy, do I miss that, Chip.
Yeah, I bet. I don't see that for the Bluesbeaters.
Oh my God. Yeah. But anyway, so we had a 14-foot box truck, and we were playing. We started working with an agent out of St. Mary's. In fact, he was the promoter for this Bicentennial Boogie Bash, and he started booking us in a few other places, and then we got hooked up with an second agent out of Buffalo.
Oh. Okay.
Who also started getting us, some gigs. And his name was John T-Tac.
Okay.
Artist talent agent. And another guy who, through Facebook, found me. When we get to that part, it's a great story of how he found, how I found him again.
Oh, okay.
And he found me. But he started booking us some gigs as well.
Wow.
And so we were leaving town and traveling. And in those days, a lot of the clubs, it was, 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5 nights a week.
And all 10 to 2 gigs, probably.
All 10 to 2 gigs.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
And so you're traveling around in in the box truck? Did you have a van that you guys?
It was a box truck for the roadies and the gear, and usually one of us designated to drive.
Right.
In a car.
And so this is still Armageddon.
Right.
So what's the transition? What's the click to the Living Dead band?
Well, here's the click. Agent John T-Tac from Buffalo was getting us a lot of gigs. In fact, more than Tom, the guy from St. Mary's, who met an untimely end, by the way. That's a whole nother, that we could do a podcast
just
on
him.
Story. Yeah,
all
just
right.
on him, probably.
We'll do that for our true crime podcast.
There you go. So John came to us, and he already had a band in Buffalo called Rasputin.
Okay.
Who was doing basically, I think they were one of the first, Kiss tribute bands, really, because they did the Kiss makeup that looked like Kiss.
Oh, okay.
They played all the Kiss songs.
Okay.
He had another band out of Ohio, that was starting to do the grease paint.
Yeah.
And another band that was called Mandarin Cypher. And then another band called Black Pearl, who was actually, they were the first to wear the white afros.
Oh.
And they were a funk band.
Okay.
They were like a hard funk band that wore white afros, white jumpsuits, and grease paint.
Sounds like the Snowman. Yeah.
It was a little different. But they were out there. So these bands were making him money.
Yeah.
And he was booking him, and his clients, his clubs were clamoring for more makeup bands.
Is that what they called them?
That's makeup bands, clown bands, face paint bands, grease. It was
interesting.
All of that. So he basically came to us and said, "Look, all the bands I have that are playing, making money, and doing well are doing this. I've got an idea for you guys." And the idea was a coffin, and that kind of. Maybe cross between Alice Cooper and Kiss and
Sabbath.
All of that. Right.
Yeah, right.
A dark band.
Yes.
He wanted a dark band. So he knew of a theater over in Akron, Ohio that had a coffin that we could get on the fly. So
of course he did.
We agreed to do it, and we said, "Oh, what the hell? It's just we'll see how nice my skin still is."
That's right.
See, that's from that grease paint, I'm telling you. Anyways,
but everyone agrees to do it. So
everyone agrees to do it.
Bill, Eric, you and
Artie. Right.
Okay.
Everyone says we're in.
Okay.
So
that's surprising to me, because usually there's that one guy, even in the Snowman, that was like, "I'm not sure I'm going to wear the paint."
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
It was you knew what you were in for.
When you talk about this guy's getting rich or he's making money, and you guys are on the road a lot, what was a band getting paid back then? Do you remember?
I absolutely remember. I can tell you.
Yeah.
I believe that the Living Dead band per night made more money than any band I've ever been in for the dollars of the day.
Yeah.
Because we were pulling in around $500 a night. So you times that times 2, 3, 4, 5 nights, and sometimes it was more. I remember weeks where we were pulling in $3,000, playing maybe 4 or 5 nights a week.
Right.
Right. So now, Chip, here's the issue. We were also spending all of that money while we were out on the road. So as I think Tony mentioned in his podcast, Bill and me, and we'd all get home and our parents would go, "Where's the money you made?" And we empty in our pockets.
Gave it right back to the venue.
Well, we'll do better next week.
Yeah.
So anyways, but it was good money. I mean, and people would come back night after night after night.
Oh,
and after getting up and going to work, even in the morning.
Yeah.
We would see the same faces.
That's interesting.
So we developed a following, and it just. And it took off.
So walk me through the first night. There had to have been like, how do I look? You had to come up with designs for your face, right?
Right. And a couple of the guys picked a design, and they stayed with that design the whole time they were in the band. I got a little, I don't know, bored or creative, whatever you want to say, and I changed mine a little bit, but. We practiced it at home. Practiced it at home just to kind of get some looks. And it seems to me the first gig may have been up at the Caboose in Fredonia.
Oh, yeah.
Possibly. I'm not exactly sure. But we do have one of the very first times on video. Okay. And that's because John T-Tac, the agent, came and was doing promo. He was shooting promo. This was lost until he and I recently reconnected, because it's the only. We have lots of 8mm video that has no sound to it.
Yeah, right.
We can dub stuff, but this is the only video that has actual audio.
And you sent me that, right?
I
I
watched.
watched.
One you have.
Yeah.
So that was probably one of the earliest performances. And Bill coming out of the coffin, it's a little stilted in that video. He kind of opens, he does his thing, and he gets out.
Steps out. You can't do it real cool stepping out of a coffin.
We were constantly working on the show.
Yeah.
We actually did write some music that went along, with the coffin.
Yeah.
And, we had, of course, the organ fugue that we played, at the beginning. And one of our roadies would come out and we had candelabras on either side of the coffin. They'd come out and light the candles. And the hardest thing was sneaking him into the coffin.
I was going to say, how did that happen? How did he get in there? Because people would just see him.
Well, imagine this, Chip, today, if this could happen. You're in a bar packed with 300 people and all the lights go out. What do you think would happen today?
That's not going to go over well. Yeah.
But that's literally what we do. And then one of the roadies with a little pen light flashlight would walk them out, get them out, open the lid and pop them in. And that'd be it.
Never any problems, no Spinal Tap experiences where you get stuck in there or anything?
No. Although I think after a while, Bill didn't like it. I'll tell you, it was comfy. We did a nice job we put a nice piece of foam. Some of our girlfriends at the time sewed up the lining.
Yeah.
So it looked good. It looked pretty good, and it was comfy.
Okay.
I took a snooze once or twice
in a while in there.
Yeah, sure. Why not? So.
But you mentioned flash pots too. Like, it all became part of a show, not just the coffin.
Well, and that was it. It was, show rock. Shock rock. Show rock. Theatrical rock. I guess. Because there was choreography to it for sure.
Right.
And a lot of, like you said, Blue Oyster Cult, Black Sabbath, Alice Cooper,
right.
AC/DC. It was heavy and hard.
Did you guys have to rehearse that stuff? I mean, like during the days when you were if you had a multiple day stint, were you just hanging out during the day, or could you rehearse? Or
I think we did get in and rehearse some of the plays. It seems you're tickling my memory here. Yeah, I think we may have done that a time or two. But for the most part, being on the road was only glamorous when you were on the stage, and maybe partying afterwards or whatever. But at 2:00 in the afternoon in a motel room watching Art Linkletter with, 3 or 4 other smelly guys, it's not really that romantic,
So you play Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio, Maryland, West Virginia, Michigan, Maine, Vermont, Canada, Holiday
Canada.
Inn,
Canada. Yeah, good story about Canada. Yeah. If you're going over the border and you have a truck, you have to produce a manifest of everything that's in your truck.
Yeah.
So we produced a manifest that said, one coffin. Yeah. Well, don't you think the border guards wanted to have a look at the coffin? So that was the first time we went to Canada. The roadies had the coffin packed all the way at the nose of the truck. Every subsequent trip to Canada, they learned to put the coffin at the back.
Interesting. Yeah.
And that's all. They just wanted to see the coffin.
Yeah, see what was in it and stuff.
But we played at a Howard Johnson's. Of all the places in Canada. Yeah. So
how was the reception in Canada? The same?
It was great.
Yeah.
It was great. But probably our biggest, the Baltimore area, that's where we probably had the biggest following.
And you had a big following with a motorcycle gang, the Pagans?
Yeah,
wow. They just kind of adopted you? Or?
Well, the club, the Aquarius Lounge, and this is, again, for 1978, sign on the door, no colors, no helmets, no knives, no chains, no guns, none of this. So we were in real biker territory, and the Pagans, they're for real. I mean, you've seen news stories about them. I mean, this was 30, 40, 50 years ago, but
right.
But they did love it. We played all the music they liked, first of all,
sure,
and then of course, the coffin. We had a coffin. And one of my best living dead band stories is simply this. I had a guy come up to me, and he he was one of the pagans, and his name was probably, Spike. Or Snake
I
or
knew it.
Butch or one of them, And he, in the worst way, wanted us to come party with him that night after the gig.
Okay.
I got something I got to show you. I got something I need to show you. Come on and party with us, So, why not? So, and we rode, and I remember riding with some of our fans, I think, and we rode and we rode. I was starting to get a little scared because we were getting out away from civilization and into the boonies,
Right.
and finally got to this party, and it was a big, massive biker party, in the woods at this guy's house. There probably was like 200-300 people there, and it was just crazy.
3 in the morning.
Exactly.
Yeah,
well, these were all at 3.
Yeah.
So Snake, we'll call him Snake. So he found me. He's, hey, glad you came. Come on, I'm going to show you. So he took us back to this little outbuilding on the property. And by this time, I'm kind of going, this is a little bit shaky. I'm out in the middle of the woods, with the pagan motorcycle gang, and this guy's leading me to a little shack in the woods. So anyways, we get in, and he's got this little party pad fixed up. He had his own coffin.
Oh, my God.
And that's what he wanted to show us. He goes, I want to show you my coffin. And he had a coffin. And in his coffin was a mannequin.
Okay.
And I won't tell you too many details about the mannequin, but it didn't look like he lived a good life, mannequin.
Yeah, right. It was a real mannequin, though.
It was a real mannequin.
Right, yeah.
It was. Yes. So that was the pagans, and probably the other Living Dead band story that I would be remiss if I didn't tell.
Yes.
Would be, again, same bar, Aquarius Lounge.
Okay.
We would need to obviously refill the flash pots, and we also discovered Red Dot Smokeless Shot, which, if you put that in a flash pot, doesn't go poof and make smoke. It shoots flame.
Okay.
So,
I know what you're going to tell.
So we were getting a little more involved with the pyrotechnics, and our roadie Larry, rest in peace. He's the one guy that's not still with us. He didn't like the smell of the flash powder. So one thing he would do is he would grind. He had a mortar and pestle that was part of the road, and he would grind up incense, and he'd put a little bit of incense in with the flash powder, and it'd give it just a nice little poof. And anyways, one night he didn't grind up the incense quite well enough, and he went to reload the flash pots, which was a process of here's what a flash pot was. It was a wooden box with 2 nails pounded in the bottom, and before you finish pounding the nails in, you got a piece of zip cord and tied one lead of the zip cord onto each nail.
Okay.
And that would plug into your switch to detonate, and then you would take one single strand of wire and wrap it between the 2 nails, hit the switch, boom, it would ignite the flash.
A spark, boom.
Exactly.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
So we went on break, and I was sitting at the bar, and the Aquarius Lounge was probably 150-foot square. It was a big square.
Okay.
The stage was in one corner. I was at the other corner at the bar, ordering a drink in between. Larry was up refilling the pots, and he was doing the smokeless shot, and he had a 10-pound can of smokeless shot that probably had a good deal still left in it.
Yeah.
And he somehow didn't see the little glowing ember in the pot that he had just wired.
Yeah.
And he went to pour that in,
and
it just went. I was at the bar, a corner away. I looked up, and the entire bar was aflame.
Holy shit.
I mean, honest to God, for about 2 seconds, I thought we're done. We're going. And as quickly as it just was done. Now, we had to take Larry to the hospital.
Yeah, I was going to say, Larry had to...
He got injured. We had to take him to the hospital.
Yeah.
And did we institute safety protocols after that? I don't, who the hell knows?
Yeah. And we should point out, Larry didn't pass away.
No, he didn't pass away.
Much later.
Actually, he died fishing, which was kind of sad. But so we had, so that it was dangerous,
So you guys were on the road, and this is a podcast about Erie, and I'm talking about a band that I wanted to talk to you about, but they only played in Erie twice.
Twice, yeah.
Was that because you were just so busy?
Well, about halfway through, we were into 79, Bill Krasinski had it.
Okay.
And I think he was getting a lot of pressure to have had it,
Yeah.
and he just couldn't do it anymore.
Okay.
So agent John T-Tack found us a replacement, and his name was Jim Gustafson from Akron.
Okay.
From Youngstown. And he was in a band called Pooh Bah. Now, Pooh Bah actually played at one of the, you'll like this because of your Erie County Fieldhouse, one of the first rock concerts that they had at Veterans Stadium. I can't remember who the headliner was, but Pooh Bah was one of the openers.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
And Jim had a couple gimmicks that he did. Something must have been going on at the time that Pooh Bah was, wasn't working, wasn't together.
Yeah.
Because basically John found us, Jim Gustafson to come replace Bill. So he actually moved to Erie from Youngstown to join the Living Dead band.
Wow.
So we played on, for almost probably better part of another year with him. So he was in the band. By the time we played Erie, he was in the band.
He was in the
right.
band. Oh, okay.
So
you played Erie later in the...
Right. It wasn't, And one of the gigs was at Paderewski Park. They just have the beer blasts at Paderewski all the time. And the other one was...
the Factory.
Which Utman Core, which at the time was called the Factory.
Yeah.
Right. And John Barton, King Cobra Karate, was also a big fan and supporter of ours.
Okay.
And I think he put that gig together, if I'm remembering. I don't know whether it was some kind of a benefit but by this time, of course, we'd be remiss in not speaking about that we had added the electric chair to our act as well.
I had that in my notes. Yeah.
Like I said, we were always, we were adding to the show and we were choreographing, a lot of stuff and having fun doing it.
So what happened with the electric chair? What was the...
Well, with the electric
scenario?
chair, we basically fried our sound man every night, so I got back at him. Bob Warren, to this day, he's our biggest fan to this day.
Okay.
And he owns the electric chair now, by the way. He wants to get his hands on the coffin, but that's a whole nother story.
I was going to say,
but we built the electric chair ourselves from scratch.
Okay.
And so it actually had a functioning Jacob's ladder on the top of it. So, you'd see the arc going up, and then just an ever so small flash pot underneath the bottom.
Okay.
So the way it worked is Eric was the executioner, and in this case, Jim and I Bill and I would. Well, I think the electric chair came after Bill, so it must have been Jim. But we would keep the music going.
I wondered,
we would keep the music going, and Bob would come. And they'd lead him onto the stage with a hood over his head, sit him down in the electric chair, strap him in. We'd play this heavy music, and and I'd be over menacing, and then all of a sudden, hit that poof. And then he'd escape from the chair, strobe lights, and come out and menace the crowd.
Oh, he would. Okay, all right.
All that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's we have a little bit of that in that video.
In the one video.
In the one video. Yeah.
Well, you alluded to the demise of the coffin, but you also mentioned earlier the demise of your bass during this time.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the long and short of it.
Yeah.
I painted it red.
Oh no. It was
sorry, all you people out there who were going, you what? I was an idiot. I was an idiot.
Did you play it back then?
I did play it.
Okay.
I also had talking about bass abuse, and here's another one that you guys won't never forgive me for, but I had a precision fretless.
Okay.
And fretless was pretty good for me because I played upright.
Right.
So
yeah.
I didn't have too much of a problem with it. But
yeah.
one of the acts we devolved into was a bass solo played with a hammer.
Like the handle of the hammer?
Like no,
you're using
like
it as a slide?
like a hammer, like a head of a hammer.
Not on the P bass.
I destroyed it.
Oh no!
I did. I know. I'm going to get so much hate mail.
After how many times did you do that trick? It could have only been once or twice.
No. I was careful. I was carefully abusing. I was carefully abusing it. But we were playing a big airplane hangar out toward somewhere out past Warren somewhere.
Okay.
And I started doing that. Some guy started rushing the stage. He was going to stop me. Oh. He didn't like it.
Yeah.
Roadies had to prevent him from getting to me.
Yeah.
So, I've been an abuser of bass. Maybe that's why I went to drums.
Maybe,
I really hated the bass on some level. I don't know.
Before we get into drums, because that's the next step, tell me, you couldn't have been the most popular band coming to town, because I know that you had some religious zealots, some folks that kind of were scared of the Living Dead band.
Yeah, that might have
only once.
Well, might have been not the greatest marketing strategy, but and in the place we were in, which was Elkins, West Virginia.
Okay,
so we's in the Bible Belt for sure.
Yeah.
And we played. They booked us. Actually, Frigid Pink was the headliner for this show, but we played after them because they booked us at midnight, and they billed it as the quote unquote midnight mass show.
Yeah.
Now, we did not do any kind of mass ever anywhere, so there was actually an ad in the local paper. He said, Watchman, sound the alarm. So they were afraid of us.
Yeah.
But it went off fine.
I'll post a picture of that ad. That was funny when I saw that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So we stirred it up a little bit. It was a fun band, but after a couple years of it, it took its toll on all of us.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, and it just got to the point. Jim was homesick, being transplanted to Erie. I mean, I love my hometown, but if you're from Youngstown and you get transplanted to Erie, you're probably going to want to. And because things were changing in the music scene by that time already.
New waves starting to creep in.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I think I heard on one of the other podcasts of yours, we did run into Pistol Whip on the road quite frequently because they also worked for some of the same agents that we did. So we had some legendary parties with Pistol Whip while we were out there as well. We remiss if I didn't mention that.
Yeah. So does he go back to Youngstown and then you guys come home? And
that's what we were. Once he decided he was going, we were not going to replace him and keep going at that point. It was done.
And the promoter was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Or you guys
and we just kind of said, "Hey, we've had it. We're not going to replace him. We're done."
So then becomes version 2 of Jack Bernard becomes the drummer. How does that even happen? I mean, did you already know how to play drums?
Well, I think maybe it was Tony. There's Tony Krasinski. I'll quote him.
Okay.
Every bass player wants to be a drummer, and every drummer wants to be a bass player.
That's right. He did say that.
So throughout my bass playing career, I played with some good drummers. I don't know if I ever played with any great drummers. I always had problems with the drummers I worked with rhythmically. That was my issue. So yes, every chance I got, I would go sit behind the set of drums. And in Armageddon, we actually did. Denny Cray came out and sang a few songs out front, and I got to go back and play the drums.
So that was trial by fire.
And that's probably what tipped me.
Oh, okay.
I was having so much fun. I loved it. I just loved it. Yeah. So when I got and I'm not exactly sure how the conversation came up, but the Frenchmen lost their drummer, Franny. I don't know whether she quit or they fired her. I don't know there's a story. You'll have to ask John Drummer, Brad Harrington, or
right.
Somebody how that came about, but they needed a drummer. And I think I half jokingly said to John, "Well, I'll do it. Let me do it. I can play drums."
You had no drums at the time.
I had no drums at the time. Okay. And I think we found some so I could go jam and prove to them that that I could play drums, and it worked out pretty well. And we drove to Cleveland and bought a drum kit.
Were they an all original band at that point?
I don't think. No, not all originals.
Combo.
They'd released a couple 45s. I was not on the recordings.
Okay.
Again, if you're catching any kind of a recurring theme here, it's that I'm usually replacing someone.
That's right. So you're not on that 3-song EP that 45 that they had.
No,
okay.
No,
all right.
I'm not.
Small Town Boy, now maybe Dirty Dishes, Wicked Wishes. That was the 45 that they had. So that was the female drummer
correct.
Before. Okay.
Yes.
I thought it was interesting. I found a review of that record. Chuck Eichweiler.
Yes.
Eichweiler. He described the band as being tough to pigeonhole. They are not really new wave, nor are they mainstream rock. If there was such a thing as Lake Erie surf music, the Frenchman's new single would be it. So I thought that was an interesting summation. Of course, John is in the band.
Right. And I think they had to go in that new wave direction because what were you going to do to out-punk Pistol Whip?
Yeah.
At that point, and things were changing, I think, and that was certainly music that was starting to come into the scene. I had to cut my hair though,
Oh, okay. Well, it was interesting because that review, they also did a review of the Pulse, their new record too. So you're right. I mean, the scene was kind of changing and everything. So let's talk about the Frenchman for a minute. Who all's in the Frenchman? John Drum.
Well, Eric Johnson. Here's Eric Johnson again. He and I joined at the same time.
Okay.
So we were sort of the B team, after Franny had left, and they wanted to, Bradley and John and Dennis Johnson. Yeah. So when we had Eric Johnson and Dennis Johnson, not related, but of course we called them the Brothers Johnson. So
perfect.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
So, but great band. Had a dress code.
Oh.
So yeah.
Which was
no blue jeans.
Okay.
By the way, I believe, as Antoine does, that bands should look different than the folks that are there to see them.
Right.
But anyways, that's just my personal opinion. Yeah. But black jeans, we could wear black, white, red, and perhaps gray sometimes.
Okay.
So, but anyways, I should note that this is about the time that Vic Vinyl came into existence.
I was going to ask, why the pseudonym?
Well, I was poor at that. At the end of the Living Dead band, I was penniless, and wound up shoveling snow at GE off piles of steel for minimum wage for a few months just to make a few bucks. And then I got a low-paying job in social service. So I didn't have money, but I wanted to look the part. So I went to the Value City and bought myself, I think must have been a $10 pleather jacket.
Whoa.
Pretty fancy. Well, so I show up in that, and John Drum takes one look at me and goes, "Oh, are you supposed to be Victor Vinyl or something?" So there's
Bingo.
Vic Vinyl was born at that point in time.
All right. So Vic Vinyl continues when you then move on, because the Frenchman only lasts
it wasn't too long. Well, John moved to Boston, and that's when he moved to Boston and started Drum McDowell. There. So it wasn't really too long. Lived the Frenchman, and then so I was looking for something to do, and we had one time John had taken me to Edinburgh. He goes, "I want to see this band called the Dogs," So he took me to the halftime. And we saw the Dog, because the Dogs were already a band, in Edinburgh, and it was Bruce Lentz, the singer, Jeff Just, the original guitar player, and a bunch of other guys who and we went to the halftime, and all I remember is Bruce was a maniac. I mean, I'm watching this guy bounce around and oh my goodness gracious,
it was a show.
But the rest of the band, except for Jeff, the guitar player, was pretty lame.
Got it.
But we still had them open up for us. The Frenchmen, that version of the Dogs opened up for the Frenchmen at Hemingway's, which was the old Hilton before it was the Avalon. Yeah. So anyways, they actually opened up for us.
That's wild.
At a show,
so you kind of knew them and they knew who you were.
Exactly. So after the Frenchmen were done, got a call from Jeff Just, the guitar player, say, "Hey, you interested in coming jamming with the Dogs?" Sure, why not? So I went to Edinburgh. Bill Nicholas, the bass player, they found him by putting up a sign on a little tear-off sign up on the campus. So they're
Edinburgh students?
They're all Edinburgh students.
And are you? I mean, at this point, you're way out of college.
I'm working. I'm working in social service at this point. Yeah. Yes, this is. See, I was always the young guy when I was playing bass. I was always the kid.
Yeah.
All of a sudden,
as the drummer.
With these guys, I'm the old man.
Yeah. Right.
I'm the responsible one.
Okay.
Oh my God, that.
Got it.
So So when it clicked. It clicked.
So Bruce is really the mainstay with that band through 10 iterations. You join in version 2.
He's been in all of them. Yeah.
And I mean, the Dogs, in case you don't know, they start in 81, go to 2004. I mean, and taking breaks here and there, obviously. I saw the Dogs plenty of times. Tell me the craziest Dogs gig you remember. There's plenty, I'm sure.
Do we have another hour?
And by the way, I'm going to put up some of those videos that you gave me. I mean, fantastic.
The Norton,
the bus video.
Norton,
That is a great video.
Well, it's so hard. I was thinking about what I was going to say, and here's what came to mind.
Yeah.
It was the best of bands. At times, it was the worst of bands.
Okay. All right.
We had a few. Yeah, I mean, we had some nights that were just Evergreen Hotel one night, and well, let me go back because I need to correct something with the Dogs.
Okay.
I listened to Tom Weber's podcast.
Yeah, right.
We love Tom, by the way. But how he came to be in the Dogs, I checked with Bruce, and I wanted to make sure that what I was thinking was more accurate than what Tom told you.
Okay.
And in fact, Bruce verified.
That was season 1, so remind me what Tom told.
Basically, what Tom's how we needed a guitar player was Jeff, our guitar player. After a party one night in Edinburgh, got in his car, drove down the street, and ran into the back of a parked car and tore his spleen up.
Right.
That was it. He was done.
Yep.
Now, as I recall, Tom said that the very next day after that Bruce called him and asked him to be in the band.
Okay.
Didn't happen that way.
All right.
Well, first of all, the very next day we were all in shock, so we weren't going to be looking to replace him, the next day. As we recall, Tom knew us, of course, because Tom recorded a demo of us. We called it the Easter Sunday demo at his parents' house in the basement. Yeah, he was one of the first guys to have a 4-track. So he had a 4-track. So he recorded it, and he sat in. So we knew he was a guitar player. Yep. He sat in. He played. And so at some point after that, I did call Tom and said, "Hey, Tom, are you interested in coming and trying out with the band? Seeing how it works out?" He said, "Sure." So he came, and he was prepared. He was absolutely prepared. He knew the material. He shredded it. He was awesome. Yeah. We were all going, "Hey, we really like it. This is good. This is going to work." Yeah. So everybody was happy. Now, I will just add, for those of us who know and love Tom, I don't think any of us would probably use the adjective humble as the first thing that would come to mind to describe Tom. I mean, Tom's an out there, kind of guy. And I said, we love him, But I'm going to tell you, Chip, for about the first 3 months that Tom was in the Dogs, he was nice and humble and would do anything we told him to do. And we were all just going, hey, this is pretty cool. Well, the honeymoon lasted about 3 months.
Gotcha.
And then he was a member of the band, just like everybody else.
Right.
But it's just kind of funny story.
And that band, in addition to Tom, went through a number of changes over the years.
Oh, yeah, because that's another thing that he remained, because in the Dogs, the bass, it seems in a band, there's always one position that's a drummer for some people, guitar. With the Dogs, it's been the bass.
Yeah,
right. Bass has been, kind of rotating. We've had 4 bass players over time.
Right.
So
one of my favorites, Bruce Hunt.
Absolutely. I don't know if I ever told him about hammering my fretless, because
he would have a problem with that.
For sure. But so Bill Nicholas, and I'm a little prejudiced, I guess, that to me, when I think of the Dogs, that original 4-piece with Jeff Just was really good.
Right.
And when Tom came in, it was also really good, and I think got a little bit better. But that kind of 4-piece basic, bass, drums, guitar, and a singer, that's the essence of the Dogs. So that first recording we made, that really captures it. But Bill Nicholas, of course, our bass player extraordinaire, he was not from here, and he was in and out of the band a couple different times. So after he finally, I think, was done at one point, Brad Harrington, Paul Fortin, again, familiar names that are coming back, joined the Dogs. Tom was still in the band at that point in time. So I think he wanted to absolve himself of that.
Well, when you record Apocalypse How, there's only 4 guys, right?
There's only 4 guys, and that was Keith Fischecko and John Mazza, TRS. They came to the Edinburgh Hotel, and they said, I mean, it was tracked. I mean, it was a fully tracked, mixable.
Okay.
I can't remember if it was 16 or what we 60 what we did. You know how many? But that's why that sounds so good.
Yeah,
is because everything was double mic'd, and we played well that night.
Okay,
you know, so
got it. Yeah.
A lot of people think that's the best recording. Okay. It captures, or at least. Maybe not the best songs or the best, but it captures the essence of what that original Dogs was. Because we did, I think we did progress as, you know, we got a little more funkified, you know, and the writing got, as more people got involved in the writing. We wrote as a band. And I will say this, and Bruce and I were talking about this. I had to call him because I could never remember it. But I think there's probably not been another band in Erie that's put out more original material.
That's probably right.
As far as release. Now, they're not big releases. You know, originally it was on cassettes. You know, and then you know. But I mean, we've got 4 full-length records, albums, because you know that are out there. So we could do at the end, we could do a whole night of material without playing a cover. Yeah. But there were some covers we still had to play. Funny story. When we were first together. When Should I Stay or Should I Go first, Bruce had the album the first day it was out. He heard that song. He made us learn that song. Okay. Now, that song didn't get radio airplay till several months down the road, but we started playing it out. We started playing, and people loved that song. So when it started getting radio airplay, I had a bunch of people come, hey, I heard the Dogs on the radio. I heard Should I Stay or Should I Go? I thought it was the Dogs. Because we had promoted their song for them, you know, months in advance.
That's funny. So, like, when you talked about it getting almost, I don't know, a different sound, like Freaks on a Bus to me sounds a way more like, I don't know. I mean, Sam's in the band at that point.
Sam, Kevin McCleary, and like I said, the writing has, you know, we're writing as a band. You know, we wrote Psycho Daddy at the Raven. Tom had a room at the Raven building. Right. You know, and that's where we wrote all that material. Yeah. You know, so we recorded those in Pittsburgh, though. We did start going to Pittsburgh to record until Board 92, the last one that we did. There was a Pittsburgh side, and we did half in Erie at TRS. Okay, but Ride in My Head was in Pittsburgh, and Psycho Daddy.
And Psycho Daddy was? Yeah. Okay, all right. Well, the interesting thing is, you know, throughout those years, like I said, that's 10 versions of the band, 1981 to 2004.
I can't keep track.
In between those, you try a few different little bands. And I love this, you know, like, because Jimmy Cuneo talked about Brando, this 50s band, and he even said the same thing, like, it didn't last. You know, you wrote, it's a flop. In 84, you're trying that.
Yeah. And the best thing about that band was the jackets.
I was going to say, you had the outfits down.
We had the outfits. Yeah. Well, you know, we wanted to do something. And again, it just, sometimes things work and sometimes great name, though. Come on, Brando. I mean, great name for a band.
All 3 of the bands that are these like one-off bands, Brando, the Squares, or just Squares, and the Millionaires were kind of like.
Yeah, the Millionaires was definitely an oddball. That was just maybe 1 or 2 gigs. That was me and Eric Johnson, Bill Nicholas, you know, and John Drum. Yeah. So it was a really weird kind of Frenchman Dogs thing. Yeah, you know? Right. But that didn't last. Now, Squares with Bernie. Yeah. That band actually did some gigs and played out for. I mean, that we did for a little bit.
What was it? What type of music? Originals?
Well, originals, and then boy, you're pressing me here now.
That's all right. Yeah, I know it's
I mean, we had a few original. Matter of fact, we recorded a demo. Oh, you know, so and that's still available. I mean, I have it. You know, okay. So, you know, I think it was 2 or 3 songs on it. And anyway, we did that at TRS. Oh, okay. You know, so, but that was it was Bernie White and
Ron Wheeler.
Ron Wheeler there, and like I said, the other Lassman, Joey Lassman. Yeah, and. Yeah, I remember playing out, but honest to God, you know, other than the originals, it's not a memorable band. Sure. Well, and it ended very unmemorably with. I said that wrong.
Poorly. Yeah.
Edit that one out.
With
but
Bernie left.
yeah, it was just a very abrupt kind of bad ending to a band, So
We've all been in those bands.
Yeah. So, but and you've mentioned some again as you're talking about this and mentioning these people. I just consider myself really fortunate over the years to have been involved with so many. Awesome musicians from Erie here.
Really?
Many of which have gone on to do, great things, some of which have got out of it. A lot of whom are still playing, and some we've lost,
I was going to say, do you still run into some of these guys here and there that you played with over the years, or do you know them? Are they still around? I mean, the Joey Lastmans or Ron Wheelers or guys we just mentioned.
Ron's another. I think he had moved out west somewhere.
Okay.
Well, he came back a few years ago, and we hooked up again. And matter of fact, he's hooked up with some kind of a studio, involved with a studio up in Jamestown. So he's kind of still in the scene too. Facebook has certainly made a difference. Like I said, I would have never been able to track these people down probably if it wasn't for Facebook.
Right. So, well, as we mentioned at the beginning, of course, since 1991, you've been in the Bluesbeaters with Antoine and everybody else. And so has that been your only band since then? Or have there been these other offshoots like the Millionaires and all that over the years?
Well, the Millionaires came back. That, like I said, that was back. Like I said, that was
87.
That was a flash in the pan. So
and really, the podcast goes to 90. But I was just curious. I mean, just like the Dogs, you ran it for a long time, but you would dabble here and there with.
Well, the Bluesbeaters have. We counted up, Kevin and I, one time. We probably have like 27 different members over 32.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay.
There's been a lot of folks through the Bluesbeaters.
Right.
So he and I, of course, are still there.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, we tried different things here and there. I actually did here we go again. Here's that familiar theme, the Shrugs.
Yeah,
now,
right.
Of course, they had a couple drummers, Tony being the first drummer.
Right.
And he left, and I can't remember who the other drummer after Tony was.
Tony Krasinski.
After Tony Krasinski.
Right.
There was another drummer for a while.
Yeah.
And then I think they broke up, maybe didn't play for a while.
Okay.
But then at some point, Eddie got a hold of me. And John Gallagher was still here, and they wanted to make another go of it because they had a bunch of material they had not recorded, on their first CD that they put out.
Gotcha.
They had a good CD's worth, but a lot of their biggest hit songs were not on that first Shrug CD. So they had some unfinished business, and that was part of it. Was we wanted to record some of those tunes, but we actually played a few gigs. So we played the Beer Mug and at least once or twice. It wasn't a lot of gigs, because then John Gallagher left.
Okay.
Right. And Jeff Larson came in for a little while, and and we tried to keep it going for a little while, but then it just kind of fell apart.
Sure.
And I think Bill kind of lost interest at that point, at some point.
Got it. When you mentioned the Beer Mug, I always love hearing those older type of bars, and it hasn't been gone that long, but back in the day, even in the 70s or the 80s, like where did you love playing and where did you not like playing in Erie?
I guess Goofy's was always home base.
That's probably where I saw the Dogs the most.
Yeah, and certainly, for the Dogs and that was home base, for sure.
Not a giant room,
No.
The Beer Mug was bigger than that. Sherlock's was bigger than that. Oliver's was bigger than that, but it was intimate, Hotel Evergreen. Other places you like to play in, or?
The Greens was, I guess that was also a home base.
Yeah, right.
It was something all these bars had in common, and I don't know whether I liked this or was deathly afraid of it, but a big enough crowd in either Goofy's or the Evergreens, and the dance floor would start going.
Oh, really?
Like this.
Wow.
I could see it from behind the drums.
Really?
Yeah, and a couple times I thought, well, it could be a problem here.
Yeah.
Well, just like I forgot to tell you, when that accident with the Living Dead band happened in Baltimore, don't you think What 2002 when the Great White burnt the bar down.
Yeah.
What do you think the first thing I thought of was? That could have been us.
Yeah. So that was the end of Flashbox.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, that was it. But yeah. So those rooms were fun. I mean, Sherlock's was a big stage. You ever play the PI? I think the Bluesbeaters. Bluesbeaters may have
at the very end.
At the very end, it would have been. Yeah. At the very end, yeah.
MJ's.
Oh, MJ! That was a heyday in the Dogs for sure. Oliver's,
right.
Oliver's. That was Donnie Detzel. Another character in the Erie scene.
His name's been mentioned.
Like I said, there's so many rabbit holes you could go down here. You take your notes and write these names down.
I know, and I have a lot of them, and I appreciate you doing this with me and giving me all this stuff. I'm just going to ask you a weird question at the end because you sent me, in addition to all those great files, you sent me some articles that you wrote on WrestleMania. And then I find a picture of you in 1967 in Sunday school, and you're visiting the Erie Times News.
Yes.
So how do you go did you always want to be a writer, or what happened? I mean, is that a little side project? What was the deal with the WrestleMania connection? This is in the 80s, by the way.
Most of us in the Dogs were big wrestling fans.
Oh.
And it's because it just so happened we would rehearse on Saturdays a lot.
Yeah.
And so at the end of Saturday afternoon, rehearsal, wrestling came on.
Yeah.
So we'd hang out and drink beer and party and watch wrestling.
Okay.
So that's kind of how the interest got there. And we'd go to the matches, in fact, probably at the field.
At the field house. Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, that had to been where we I know Absolutely. It's where we saw it.
Yeah, the old. Who were the guys? Sergeant Slaughter.
Exactly. And, I've got pictures. I've got pictures from the field house of wrestling.
Oh, really?
If you're ever interested in.
I would love to see those. Yeah.
So that's how the interest got started.
Okay.
And then of course there was the MTV rock and wrestling, and that's sort of what gave me the idea. Well, I can do that on a local. I can cover wrestling, but it wasn't covered in the sports page, of course.
Right,
because
right. It was
that would be sacrilege. Yes.
Yeah.
Covered in the showcases. Entertainment, which it is.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, like the rock and wrestling, that was Captain Lou Albano and Cyndi Lauper and that connection there. And so did you just write those few articles, or did you?
Yeah, that was
write
it. It was kind of just a flash in the pan.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
interesting.
I did at some point go back and got a degree in communication to add to my other worthless degree in psychology, but that's the.
Well, yeah. I got you. I have a degree in psychology too, and I'm a writer. So I got it.
Yeah, so
I understand. Well, this was good. Anything else we missed?
Well, let me check my notes here. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't say something about my lovely wife, Joanne, because one of the things that did happen, we got married in 1999.
Okay.
And I was telling her earlier, people used to often describe me as uptight, wild, kind of little on edge.
Okay.
After I got married, that all went away.
Oh,
I became Mr. Calm, Mr.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, Joanne. Yeah, she's in the control booth over here watching us.
So indeed, life is good. Still playing.
That's right.
And picked up the bass again with Step and Pap. I don't know what's up to answer your question. I don't know if we're coming back or not, but I had a blast. George Tanner, Tim, and just like yourself, like I said, we've both been around, and this is the first time we've met.
Right.
Step and Pappy, the first version, guitar player, Tim Schrum, my age, been around Erie all his life.
Yeah, I know that name.
He'd been around Erie all his life, been in a bunch of bands I've heard of. We never met, never run across, and we just hit it off, became great friends, and loved playing with him in the band,
And tell folks what Step and Pappy plays.
Step and Pappy plays... I don't know, country punk.
Country punk, yeah.
No, not really country punk. I would say 60, a lot of 60s and soul stuff, as well as some country.
Cool.
Traditional country though. None of that new stuff. That's
right. Did you have
that ain't country.
Did you have to go buy a bass, or did you have one?
I had a bass all along.
You did, okay.
And I wound up getting another, and some guy came to a Step and Pappy gig and said, "Hey, I got a Mexican P bass I'd like to get rid of if you're interested in it." He brought it over to my house. I paid $50 for it.
Oh my! Yeah.
So
that's what you're playing.
that's what I've started playing now.
All right. I got one of those too.
Yeah.
They're great.
Yeah, it sounded great. So there it is. Bass and drums. We are the unsung heroes.
Absolutely. Keeps everybody moving. So
there it is. Yeah.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it, Jack, and whatever other name you go by. Thanks for being with us.
I think you got them all there.
Yeah.
We will give the folks at the cemetery a big problem with my tombstone, though.
That's right. You'll need a big one. So thanks, man. I appreciate it. Hey, this isn't my normal end of the show announcement, although it's similar a little bit. I wanted to tell you, first of all, that this coming Tuesday, May 3rd, is our monthly music night at the JPT Foundation Events Hall, which is on West 38th Street, right next to Our Lady of Peace Church. Now, this month, as always, we are featuring our house band, the Fabulous Leftovers Orchestra, for the first hour. And then you'll hear the mellow and tight harmonies of Acoustic Ear Candy, which features Mike and Marie Miller and Harry and Donna Parker. After that, returning to our stage is Angelo Phillips and Shani Bills, who will end the night for us. So stop by this Tuesday, May 3rd, from 6 to 9. It's totally free, and any donations, including any food donations that you bring, go to the Second Harvest Food Bank. And speaking of the JPT Foundation and Angelo Phillips in particular, I just want to say heartfelt thanks to both of them for their financial support of the podcast. It's very much appreciated. And finally, I wanted to make sure you know that our buddy Jack Stevenson's two-man happy hour has expanded into a full-fledged podcast featuring Nat the Hat. She used to be on Rocket 101. Jack and Brian Waller, the sound man extraordinaire from Wild Sound Productions, and who also volunteers his time for our monthly music night. Each week they talk with current musicians and local Erie folks about all sorts of different topics, and they also play local music, and then they give you the skinny on who's playing where each weekend, where and when each weekend. So just look for live music chat with Nat the Hat on any podcast app, or go to twomanhappyhour.com. That's the number 2, manhappyhour.com. All right, that's it for this week. I'm Chip Shell, your host, and thanks again for listening to the Erie Music History Podcast. See ya.